Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Go Fast, Grow Fast, where we talk to smart people that are in the trenches trying to grow revenue at companies. Today, I am really excited to talk to Alan. Alan, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank
you for inviting me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I couldn't say no. One look at your background, and we knew we had to have you here. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell people a little bit about your experience and who they're listening to today?
Sure. So my name is Alan Gonsenhauser. My company is Demand Revenue. It's at demandrevenue.com. So I started in finance, but for most of my career, I've been either a chief marketing officer or P&L general manager. I've been a CMO 10 times, 7 full-time, and I started Demand Revenue 3 years ago. And in those 3 years, I've been an interim or fractional CMO for 3 companies. But also, I spent 6 years at Serious Decisions in Forrester, where I mentored, advised, and coached over 130 chief marketing officers and marketing leaders. So what I do today, I do 3 things. I'm a CMO or marketing leader, marketing executive, coach, advisor, and mentor. I'm sometimes an interim CMO, and I also help CMOs and chief customer officers with different projects that they have to speed up their marketing, make it more operationally efficient, things like that. Most of my work is for portfolio companies of private equity firms. So I have worked with some smaller companies, $1 million in ARR, but most of the companies I work with are 200 million into the billions and are owned by private equity. So again, thank you for the invite. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. So that's interesting with the private equity focus. Can you maybe dive into that a little bit? How is that different or the same than a lot of other companies?
Well, most companies go through different inflection points. So when you're a startup, you have to get problem market fit. You have to solve problems that people really care about and are willing to pay for. And if you're successful there, then you build products and you have product market fit. That's the next inflection point. And the questions you ask yourself and the competencies are a bit different. If you're successful there, then you'll get to platform market fit, which has a lot of value across platforms of products. And the companies that private equity firms invest in are probably in the either product or platform market fit phases of their growth.
Right.
So these are companies that have proven they've been successful in different markets. They're probably EBITDA positive or earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation positive. And they need to scale and they need to get to the next level. So really good quality private equity firms will acquire these companies, give them the resources and assets to improve their infrastructure, people, process, technology, data, analytics, and get them to the next level, and then either sell them or they'll help them do M&As, help them with the infrastructure they need, help them rebrand if they need to rebrand to a new name. And it's an exciting time for these mid-volume companies to help with their future growth. So I have a lot of experience doing that, so I love helping these companies out, whether it's helping the CMO or helping the CEO and sitting on the executive leadership team and helping them maintain momentum in marketing if they have maybe a gap in management, or mentoring their CMOs and CCOs. So I think it's a great place to be. It tends to be larger companies and companies that have real problems and need investment, either to do roll-ups, carve-outs, change their business model, go from on-prem to SaaS. There are a lot of different situations that these companies are in. But I think they're all exciting.
Yeah, definitely. We have kind of a recurring discussion about the different phases, right? A company going from 0 to 1, they're just starting out, going to 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And, one of our first guests, he talks about he loves the 10 to 100 phase.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 100 to 1 billion kind of phase a lot of the time.
I generally work with companies over 100 million into the billions. Yeah.
Right.
And also I have a couple of enterprise clients as well, but mostly private equity.
And those it's the same but different. as with most things in life. But I imagine at those scales, you start to have a lot more challenges of things like team alignment and making sure everybody's rowing in the same direction. When you only have 20 employees, like, you just go talk to everybody and you can get them aligned. But when you have a couple thousand, that becomes a very different initiative.
Well, absolutely. Most companies fail with lack of alignment. And I'll quote one statistic, if I may. One of the founders of Serious Decisions, John Neeson, did a study several years ago, but it's still relevant. They looked at 400 B2B companies, and they looked at the level of alignment between marketing, sales, product, and customer success. And the outcome was those companies that were well aligned and stayed aligned grew 19% faster and were 15% more profitable. And it makes sense when you think about it. And there are a lot of elements to alignment, stopping random acts of marketing, and being really strategic and thoughtful about, how marketing and sales work together and product work together, and having, consistent plans, and the C-suite moving in the same direction, not trying to do everything, not trying to boil the ocean, but picking the top priorities and saying, okay, what segments are we going to go after and why? And do we have the internal capabilities to do that? So great question. And we could talk about alignment all day and how to get to alignment, but it's a really significant area. And it's an area a lot of companies need help in.
Yeah. No. And the question that always comes back to me is, in that world, why is it so hard? Like, it seems like such a simple thing, right? We just got to be aligned. Everybody go, why is this so hard?
Oh, I don't know. My wife would probably give a different answer than I would, and say, if it were all women executives, you wouldn't have alignment issues. But, people fight over it. Their egos and who has the tail, and, who's running the show, and are we sales driven? Are we product driven? Are we finance? There are a lot of people need to get on the same page. And what I believe is a really good moniker for alignment is focusing on the customer, loving customers. Because if you do that properly, that's your future financial performance. You do that right. So many companies are not doing it right.
Let's dig into that a little bit, because you mentioned, delighting customers, right? And that's like a foundational element of successful marketing. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that? Why does that matter if it's not obvious to somebody?
Well, you've got the pre-sale customer experience and you've got the post-sale customer experience.
Right.
So if you take the pre-sale customer experience first, do you provide relevant content? Do you help them buy? Do you, not mask all of your content wanting a marketing qualified lead? Because studies have shown that only about 5 to 8% of people that go on your website or any website will fill out a contact us form and identify themselves, because they're shopping. They're not ready yet. They don't want to be contacted. They want to learn, and they want to, and if you're providing the right content to their needs and you understand the buying process, and you don't try to always get their information until they're ready, you're going to be in much better shape in terms of meeting their needs. And we can come back to that in terms of what's working and what's not working in terms of intent information, but I'll leave that as a different topic. So you want to have a really good pre-customer experience, or they may never consider buying from you. Right. And, you can tie that to them being aware of your brand too, because if you look at the C-suite and the short list of companies they consider, they only consider, in most cases, companies they heard of. So branding is important too, even though you don't have the same cause and effect as you have with demand in a shorter period, but over time brand seeds demand. So that's the pre-sale experience. Then you have the post-sale customer experience. How do you onboard customers? How do you make sure that they continue using your solutions? How do you provide value? Do you have a process to look at their satisfaction or dissatisfaction? Are you doing a net promoter score? Maybe you're doing it, but are you doing it correctly? Do you take the information, aggregate it, and understand what the real issues are, And then do you act on that information cross-functionally and tell the customers that you listened to them and the changes that you made? And, that all shows up in your net revenue retention. So if you think about, financial results and performance are in the rearview mirror, right?
Right.
If you want to drive your future financial results and profitability, it's dependent on a couple things: your net revenue retention and the number of customers that recommend you to others, your advocates. The buzz you have in the market about the quality of your brand and your solutions, your products, your support, everything that you do, and the experience that you provide. So if you can peel the onion back on net revenue retention and advocates that bring you new business, that's your future financial results. So there are definite benefits to loving customers. I'll recommend a book later, but the person who started NPS 20 years ago has now gotten to NPS 3.0. And he's made millions by investing in companies that do customer management correctly.
Yeah.
And he comes to the opinion that 90% of companies don't. They
Right.
pay lip service to customer experience, but they really don't make it part of the culture. That's when
I
you can
definitely
bring
buy into
the
that.
customer and the employee together to serve the customer. And successful companies that do that have proven that they are stronger from a financial standpoint and a goodwill standpoint.
Right.
So enough about that. But
No, that's
it's
great.
important
And
issue.
so with net revenue retention, it's an amazing metric because I mean it's your customers voting with their actual wallets
Yes.
that they value your product, right?
It's
Like they're
the
saying,
ones you have plus the new ones you get plus the
Yep.
upsell cross-sell.
and so
Yep.
that's powerful. One of the things that I hear a lot from marketers is there's this attitude that, well, that's owned by product. That's not a
Or owned by
market.
sale. Right.
Yeah, it's
That's
sales
old
and
thinking.
product are doing that, right?
Don't
So
do
like,
that.
tell me why a marketer. Yeah, how do you influence this as a marketer? Why should you own this metric as a marketer?
Well, you don't just own the metric by yourself. You own it with the other functions. But functions, again, need to be aligned, working
Mhm.
together to drive net revenue retention, because some of the causals of bad net revenue retention can be product, can be support, can be service, can be it can be the invoice is not understandable, can be a bunch of, you don't communicate with customers enough. But marketing organizations need to focus more on the customer and customer marketing and customer management than they have in the past.
Yeah.
It's really important these
Yeah.
days, and understand what the pre-sale buyer's journey looks like and what the post-sale customer experience looks like, because that's going to drive financial results. So it's an area where not only marketing, but the different functions need to work together. So when I've put teams together to respond to the input customers give on Net Promoter Score, these are cross-functional teams. So you've got marketing, you've got sales, you've got operations, you've got service, you've got the different aspects that touch even finance, because they have the invoice, things that touch and receivable, and how receivables are managed, and all the customer touch points.
Yep.
And you have to be willing to make some longer term decisions, not just short term,
Yep.
decisions when
That
you're
is
working
key.
with customers, things that they will remember and be more loyal to you for.
Yep. I am hopeful. I see a trend that I hope continues of marketing organizations taking more responsibility for actual revenue numbers, which is not traditionally true. And I think it's leading to these kinds of good conversations of, well, the whole point is to drive that. And yes, it's hard to link it, especially if you're talking about top of funnel activities. You have to take that long-term view. Like you just said, it may not convert somebody tomorrow, but you're setting the foundations for your business's long-term success.
Yes.
And so I want to go back a little bit to something that you teased the audience with there, and that is the MQL not working, the marketing qualified leads. And can you dig into that a little bit more with, talking about, the people, only 5%, actually wanting to convert? Like what does this mean? How do we approach this? What isn't working?
Well, when I say the MQL isn't working, what I'm talking about is only relying on MQLs is not a strategy for today.
Mm-hmm.
You still need to drive MQLs and SQL, marketing and sales qualified leads and in your funnel. But understand that only 5 to 8% of people that come to any website want to identify themselves. So
Right.
most visitors to your website and other websites and your competitors' websites stay anonymous because they want the information, but they don't want to be hassled, and they're not maybe ready to talk with a salesperson. They're doing their initial research.
Right.
And these are multiple people on a buying committee, depending on the average selling price of, the products that you're selling. So if you require someone to give their email or contact information, most times they won't, and you might lose them as so if you what is it called, mask your content, or if you hide your content.
Gate it. Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
If you gate the content,
Yeah,
email
thank
gate it,
you. If you
right,
gate
yeah.
your content,
Mhm.
most times people won't see it.
Right.
So if it's important content that you want people to see in the buyer's journey, be very careful what you gate. And you should
Yep.
gate a lot less.
Yep. I
What
think
you
the
should be
bar has
doing-
gotten a lot higher for what you gate now too. A decade ago, you could gate just about anything, and like people are going to be like, sure, I've got a throwaway email, I get it. But now the amount of value you need to put behind that gate to
Yeah.
make it valuable, like it's real money now required.
It may be if you want to participate in a webinar or you want
Yeah.
to order something, but be careful what you gate, because they may never see your content. If they don't see it, they're
Yep.
going to move on to someone else, and you may never
Yep.
get an opportunity to be part of the buying process.
Right.
If only 5 to 7% of folks will actually give you their information and become potentially an MQL once they're warmed up.
Right.
What you need to do is understand through intent data people that are coming to your website or your competitor's website and what they're looking for and the kind of content they need, so you can serve up the right kind of content and move them along the buying process, even if you don't know who they are, because you'll have a much better chance of them considering your products and services if you do that. For example, if you don't know how many people are crowding your website from the same companies in a short period of time, even if you don't know who the individual people are, you need to, because, purchases, there are more and more people involved on buyers committees in purchases, especially with higher dollar items. And if a bunch of people start to crowd your website, that's interest from a certain company. You may not know who they are, but you know that they're interested in whatever it is you're selling.
Yep.
That should be a key buying signal to then try to provide content or try to make connections with people in that company. But most people are going to stay anonymous. So that's
Right.
why intent data has become a lot more important. And that changes the process. So you need the infrastructure to make that happen.
Right. So does that mean, it's like, okay, I get it, the ABM philosophy, so all we have to do is we have to go buy a Clearbit subscription, put that on the website, and we're done, right? Like, we fix the problem? Is that it?
Well, I've got a free version of Clearbit on my site, so I see who comes to it, but I don't see who's crowding it. I don't know if Clearbit does it all, or 6 Sense is a really good solution, but it's not. Technology by itself does nothing. You
Right.
need the people, process, technology, data, analytics. You need to tie the technology and implement it very effectively with your BDR group or whoever is qualifying leads and looking at leads, not just getting the technology, but it's creating the process to make the technology work. And there's some really good books on the topic. Lanny Conant, who's the chief revenue officer at 6 Sense, wrote a book, No Spam, No Cold Calls, No Something Else. And it talks about 6 Sense, but it's really good on how you make that technology work.
Right.
To leverage the hidden people that are not identifying themselves that come to your website. So
Yeah.
that's something that's, something in the past that isn't working as well as it used to, and something that folks should understand and build capabilities around today.
I'm curious, I've had this feeling that data fluency is only becoming more and more important for a marketer, especially if you want to grow in your career. And someone who's talked with as many CMOs as you have and seen as many companies, I'm curious if you're seeing the same sort of thing, or is it just becoming a niche part of marketing where there's a department that's all they do and nobody else really needs to worry about it? Or is that going to be something that just impacts everyone?
You talking about data analytics?
Yeah, data and just being able to work with data as a marketer
Okay.
and understand it and make it a core part of what you offer.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think there are a couple things here. One is data quality, and there's a lot of dirty data. Let me restate that. There's a lot of filthy data in companies where, you've got sales and marketing using data for targeting, but the data is
Right.
out of date. The addresses are wrong. It's like, so the first thing is you need some clean data to be effective. And in order to get that, you've got to make data quality a thing.
Mhm.
You've got to resource it. You have to have the processes, the technology, the people. Whether that happens in marketing operations or sales operations or somewhere, someone has to do it. So if you're not relying on the right base data, you've got a problem to begin with. And so many companies have that issue, which is why I'm bringing it up. Having some clean data, then it's, I agree with you. It's very important to be able to analyze the data and understand what it's telling you and making the numbers talk. What's the expression? Information is not power. Access to it is. So you need to have relevant, accurate data at the right time to make the numbers talk and to aid in decision making. And that's what it's all for. So yes, the whole element of data quality and relevance and all that is a lot more important, especially now. And, when I talk about, I've mentored, I don't know, 130, 150 CMOs, as I mentioned earlier. And I've written some blogs on what effective CMOs need to be today. And I've likened it to an orchestra conductor. You've got the element of jazz, which is creative, understanding creative breakthrough, and classical, which is analytical. And you've got to bring the creative and the analytical together and be able to meld those to be an effective CMO today. It's almost like being a general manager. So you have to, and you also have to understand the language of business and be able to talk to CFOs and CEOs and in their language, not marketing speak, to kind of translate what everything means. Yep. And yes, marketing is much more involved in, demand and driving revenue and all that today. I think it's a very exciting time. It can be a challenging time too, but I think it's very exciting. Personally, I came from, my master's is in finance, and then I moved over to the light side early in my career into marketing. CFO would take the opposite way, but I've always been able, and I also spent time in sales. So I've always been able to speak well with CFOs and speak the same language. And I think that's important for CMOs today. Yeah. The C-suite relationships are very, very important to meld early on, especially with so many people thinking they know what marketing is and they're good marketers. Everybody thinks that, but their perception of what marketing is supposed to be has been jaded by what it was in the past.
Right.
And CMOs need to, be driving strategy and be, very, very much involved in strategy. And that may require re-education of what marketing should be within companies.
Yeah. I think that is a big thing that's happening right now, because you're seeing things like CROs taking the place of a CMO, or other brand new C acronyms that are just constantly popping up and vying, and CGO for growth and all these things. And I think a lot of it just stems from this misunderstanding of what actually is marketing and what is the responsibility of that in different types of businesses. Yeah. Right. And I think another core problem is, you actually mentioned this earlier, coming back to alignment, and it's the classic barrier between marketing and sales and getting them.
We need more leads.
Yeah.
We need more leads. Your leads suck.
Yep. Right? You need to close more of the leads. No,
I can't tell you how many companies I've seen that. Yeah.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild that it's two sides of the same coin, and they butt heads. And I think that's a big part of what's driving all these new C-suite acronyms, is figuring out, how do we make this organization function as a unit? And, and I'm curious, across all these CMOs and organizations you're touching, are you seeing some things that work well for driving the alignment between those two? Or are you seeing some common problems that cause that misalignment?
Well, I'll give you an example. I was working with one private equity portfolio company about $900 million company that's done like 20 acquisitions, and I was working between marketing and sales. I was like Switzerland. So I was interviewing people in marketing, interviewing the BDRs, which were part of, the sales group, to try to get people on the same page. And it all comes down to service level agreements. So, let's define what a hot lead looks like. And now we're talking on an MQL basis. So we define what a hot lead, according to sales, looked like, the favorite leads.
Yep.
And got marketing to agree to qualify and segment those hot leads. So that was number one. Number two, given those hot leads, how quick are you going to follow up? What's the service level agreement? So we moved that from could be a week when the leads got stale to within 24 hours.
Right.
That was another part of the service level agreement.
Right.
Then we found there were issues with lead assignments by sales operations. So between IT and sales ops, we fixed that. So the right leads were going to the right reps, from, marketing to the BDRs to the account executives.
Right.
So a lot of them are process issues, but, getting people on the same page and putting the right information into Salesforce, not like junk information, are all important things. But that requires good sales management to reinforce with their people. It requires reporting to show by sales team, especially in bigger companies, and by person, how quickly people are following up, what the different ratios are, so you can do exception reporting and say, oh, great successes over here, and share successes, but is this group not following up on the leads? What's going on? That's an example of getting quality data to help you with process management. Kind of like a manufacturing line. You want to make sure all your pistons are firing in the same direction. So you want to make sure marketing, sales operations, marketing operations are on the same page, using the same data. They define what good looks like, what good data looks like, and they're speaking the same language. But, these things can be dealt with, but they're process issues that need to be worked.
Right.
And I've helped companies through that where they have issues. A lot of it's about alignment. A lot of the issues is with alignment.
Yep. And even just having a straightforward conversation, like you say, let's just agree on what we're actually talking about here. What do these terms actually mean, right? Because an MQL, an SQL, a lead, all these things, they're so amorphous unless you just sit down and put it on paper, right?
Yeah. That's right. A lot of this stuff is common sense.
Right. Which is not always common.
Exactly. Which is funny. But you're right.
You mentioned a concept, the kind of like a factory line. Like, you got to make sure the whole line is functioning, for the full life cycle. And that conversation leads to AI, our new factory worker here. I ask every guest, how are you using or not using AI? Are you using it in your day-to-day? Are you using it for automations? Is it your assistant? Is it taking over your job? What's your current perspective on AI and how it fits into your world?
Great question. Very relevant today, obviously. I started using AI to prevent writer's block if I was writing blogs. Give me an initial outline but then I look at it very carefully. I make a lot of changes to it. So it's helped me a little bit with some of the blogs, because if you look at demandrevenue.com, you'll see I have a lot of content there. So I started there, and then I started using it on some client projects where, for example, I was helping one private equity portfolio company to rebrand and rename. And I went to some of the big websites, I'm trying to think of the names, where you've got customers that are talking about that vendor's software products and evaluating their products. I forget the name of that. But one of them was Gartner. There were a couple of others. But I had AI actually go out,
and those kinds
shop
of things.
those sites and summarize it for me, and then bring it all together. Then I would look at it and I'd say, hey, you know what customers are saying about you, And that made it a lot quicker. I tried something that was like an AI-based virtual assistant called Pi. And maybe it's better now, but when I tried it, it was an AI virtual assistant trying to be funny. and it would tell jokes all the time, really bad jokes, and it would
Oh
joke
boy.
around with me, and it was really unproductive. And
Right.
so I stopped using it. I showed my family one day. I said, "Get rid of it." But and it would keep giving excuses. It wasn't ready yet. I don't know. I said that I don't think the technology was ready.
Yeah.
But I love ChatGPT. It's great. I've gotten a lot of use out of it, both in writing and also summarizing information. So I think it's important for all of us, whether you're a CMO, CEO, people in marketing, to learn how it can help you. It's a tool. It's a disruptive tool. And we all have to become, over time, good promptologists, be able to give it good prompts. But there's a lot of help, a lot of really good people that have done a lot of work, that train marketing groups. I know a few people that are great at that. But it's becoming more important. It's not going away. So it's like any other disruptive technology. We have to embrace it and make it a tool for us and not be reticent or scared of it. It's another tool to make us more productive, which I think is great.
Yep. Yeah, I always tell people if you learn AI, it gives you superpowers. It massively gives you the ability to work smarter, not harder. So
Yes.
it's worth investing the time in understanding it. So just to round that out, are you using AI for help with like strategy work and that sort of stuff at this point? Or is it still more focused on like content work or analysis work? You mentioned
Well, I do content for
analyzing
my own
reviews.
website, but
Mhm.
what I offer my clients really are three things: strategy, leadership, and my network.
Right.
And so I'm doing a lot of strategy work for clients. So I will leverage AI and ChatGPT to go out and summarize some things for me
Mm-hmm.
that I can look at. But then I'm always very careful
Yeah.
to look at the output carefully, because it's not all
Yeah.
accurate.
Right.
It's not all accurate. And you just have to be really, really careful what it gives you. And it's got to make sense. It's got to pass the smell test. But I use it to
Yep.
save time to do some of that. Has it replaced everything? No, it hasn't. I mean,
Mm.
but I try to find ways it can make me more productive where it's a good use case for
Right.
ChatGPT
Right.
or some of the other tools out there.
Right.
But they're great tools. I mean, they're more and more all the time. So
Yeah, that's definitely one of the, your story about the agent, and the assistant. It's like
yeah,
with all these tools, you have to reevaluate all of them every quarter because
yeah.
things are just moving so crazy fast. I
Yeah,
mean,
mine might be better by now. I don't know. It was a few months
yeah,
ago. I kind of gave up because it made me less productive. But
right,
yeah.
right, yeah, yeah. But 6 months from now, maybe they'll figure something out, and it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, now you can't live without it.
Right.
That's how fast things are
The
moving right
idea
now.
of having a virtual assistant,
Mm-hmm.
that's basically free,
Yep.
was, I thought, a great idea. It just wasn't baked enough yet.
Yep.
But I think the idea is sound if they can
Yeah.
get it working right.
Right. Yep. You mentioned earlier about a book recommendation that you have for people. Would you like to share what that is?
Sure. I read a lot of books. If you go to my website, no, sorry for the phone. If you go to my website, Demand Revenue, I have a section on books where I've done 14 video book reviews. But
Oh,
one of
nice.
them is a book called Winning on Purpose. Winning on Purpose is a book about loving customers. The person who wrote it, Fred Reichheld, is the person who started Net Promoter Score 20 years ago. And this book is about NPS 3.0. And I touched on this earlier, one of his new parts of NPS 3.0 is a new metric that he's calling earned growth. What earned growth is net revenue retention plus the amount of new business you get by existing customer recommendations. And if you think financially what those two numbers mean, you add them together, that's very correlated with your future financial performance. So this book is all about loving customers, about, a lot of examples of companies that have done it right, a lot of examples of companies that haven't done it right, and what not to do. I'll just give you one story. I was buying a few years ago my Audi, and I was at the dealership, and we finished the paperwork, and he goes, "Would you please fill out our survey? You're going to give us a 10, right?" And I said, "Excuse me?" So some people try bastardize NPS to get a certain result. That's the way not to use it,
Yep.
the best use of it. And it doesn't matter what your score is. What matters is when you get customer feedback and you understand how you can do better with the detractors and the passives,
Right.
it's like gold because you know what to fix, you know what to work on. Also, the promoters tell you what they love about your brand. So it's really great information. The promoters being the 9s and 10s, the passives being the 6s and 7s, and the detractors being the 0s through 6s in that metric. But
no,
it's a great book. I think every CFO and CEO should read it. And
I think that's a great one, and we'll link to that too. And it reminds me of, there was a period of time where you would take an Uber ride, and every single Uber ride would end with the driver saying, "Hey, I'll give you a 5-star if you give me a 5-star." And it's like,
it defeats the purpose.
The metric no longer has any meaning, right? But revenue numbers don't lie as easily. So having that as a North Star is, I think, a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I think, we're coming up on the end here, but I think one of the powerful things that you've mentioned is, creating advocates, finding the advocates, trying to enable new ones, right? And
yes,
here's an easy question. How do we do that as marketers? How do we make that happen?
At the risk of mentioning another book, I'll mention another book. There's a book that was written a while ago by Seth Godin called Purple Cow. Most cows have black and white stripes, right? Purple cows. If you see a purple cow, you're gonna look up because it's different and you've never seen that before. And it's all about being remarkable to the small segment of people who really care and really have a need and really have a pain point. And you have something you can help them with the jobs they're trying to get done in a better way, less expensive, more convenient, better results, lower cost, but something they care so much about because it helps them with what they're trying to do, they're going to tell the world about it.
Right.
And if you can find those, you could call them early adopters, but those people that are really jazzed on your brand and your value proposition, you know how to target them into your ideal customer profile. And that's part of net retention. You have to be going after the right customer relationships that you're going to keep. But if you know those folks that are really jazzed about your value proposition because you're remarkable to them and they tell all their friends about, then you're really building a franchise that will weather the storms.
That's amazing. Sense. I think that is an amazing thought to kind of wrap up on. It's powerful, and it's been true in marketing for as long as I can remember. You can't go wrong with those fundamentals. Is there any other things you want to close out with, Alan? Any final words?
Just thanking you for the invitation. I really enjoy these types of discussions, and if I can help anybody, feel free to contact me at my website, demandrevenue.com, or my email is ag@demandrevenue.com. But I love helping companies through, their growth inflection points. And I love helping CMOs and marketing leaders to be more successful. As I said, I've worked with so many, and it's a big part of what I love to do. So, yeah, if anybody needs help, just feel free to reach out to me.
We'll put your contact info in all the notes and all the posts, so it'll make it easy to find everybody. And I am so grateful that you made the time today. Your background, your experience, there's a lot of valuable nuggets in here. So I hope everybody found something valuable and learned something new. And let's keep pushing along, everybody. So
thank you. Alan. My pleasure. Thanks, Sean.